So let's continue our conversation about falling up in ways now that we can redefine who we are with our identity, our sense of self, starting putting some of these pieces together to create this part of you now that's a little bit more solid, a little bit more firm as you go through this process of recovery. And just remember, this is a process. Pieces will fall apart once in a while and you're going to have to put them back in again. That's okay. We're still creating something different. We've been looking at ways to manage some of this, and now we've been talking about how do we start putting some of these pieces back together again that have been knocked apart by divorce. One of the things to recognize is change and transformation. That's what you're going through, whether you wanted to or not. Transformation comes before change. We can't change something in our life unless we've had something transform us. Transformation means it's a ripping away of something old. We have to move that out of the way in order for some of the change to come in. And it's painful. Letting go of a relationship or ripping away parts of you that were caught up in this whole divorce process. That transformation, as painful as it is, helps you get to the change part and allows you to start putting firmer pieces together as you create this new sense of self. Blend it in with the old part of you that was really good and kind of lost in that identity that you were trying to rediscover again. So how do we keep these pieces together? I've gotten my physical part of me in a better place. I'm not eating as much ice cream, but I'm starting to feel a little better. And I have a number of clients who've said, you know what, I feel like I'm physically better than I was when I was in a relationship. My weight isn't so much and I'm exercising more. And that's great. That process keeps going as we add that physical piece back in a better way. Socially, some of the friends that I've been really counting on, they've been really there for me. This is kind of nice. We have a better and deeper relationship with my friends now than maybe I had before, because now they're just seeing me and not me in a relationship. And it's been kind of nice. And this group that I've connected with, a divorce support group, or a group at my church or synagogue or mosque, or a group that I volunteer with, they've been a whole new process for me. These are great new friends that I probably wouldn't have had if I was still in a relationship. Or my work now is a little bit different because I've looked at it a different way. It's not defining me, but I'm doing what I need to do to keep my finances in order. Or maybe I've had to get a new job. And this is kind of nice. It's not too bad. Maybe the kids are doing better now because we've been through this. We've gone through that first holiday or the first time when it's just us, and we have to figure out how we're going to manage that. So now these pieces that have been pulled apart are starting to form up again. And how do we keep them together? And I want to show you just a picture real quick. If you can see that. It's a piece of pottery that has been cracked, and you can see it's been reformed with gold pieces that have been interlaid to keep each piece together to create a new piece of pottery. And I know I might not pronounce the name of this right, but it's an ancient Japanese craft called kintsugi, I think, Kintsugi. And this was in an article I read a number of years ago about how this ancient Japanese craft was designed by these Japanese men and women who do this. They take these broken pieces and they sit with them for a while and they figure out how they're going to recreate the pottery piece that had been smashed. But they put this gold inlay in there that holds them together. Now, it's not the same thing. They're not recreating what had been broken. They're putting it in a new place, but they're putting it in such a way that it's a whole different piece of pottery. And it's beautiful, even with all the flaws in it. It's really impressive. And if you ever see one of these in person, you look at it in a whole different light and you think, was this put together like this? And then you start to realize, no, these pieces had to be broken in order to be put back in such a way to create something new. And that's what you're doing through this recovery process. You're creating something new by taking some of these broken pieces that came out through this divorce, but putting them back in a better way. That this time, as we start to add more now to this piece of pottery, your life, think of this piece of pottery as your new life and your new identity that you're creating now, in addition to all the other people that are part of this. You're creating something and you're holding it together with all the things you've done to get to this point. My physical life, I like the fact that maybe I am physically doing better, and I'm going to hold on to that. I like the fact that maybe I'm not putting so much emphasis on my work because I'm spending more time with my friends and my kids. I like that. I'm going to hold on to that. I like the fact that I'm playing my piano now for a couple hours each week, or I'm taking those walks, or I'm back into doing some artwork that I've never done before. I just started to play a musical instrument again, whatever that is. I kind of like that. This fits me again, and I like it, and I want to hold on to it. And what keeps the gold pieces in place is just your own sense of, I am worthy to do this. I'm allowed to be able to do this. I'm allowed to be able to go back to those groups that I couldn't go to before because I felt I was embarrassed or I felt shame. That I can do that because it brings joy to me and it creates who I am as a person. And I'm going to stand on my new identity. I'm allowed to do that because we all have flaws. We all have stuff that goes on in our lives. We just don't like to admit it as much. And divorce is not a pretty word. Nobody likes to say it. It doesn't come up in casual conversation like so many other words do. It doesn't just really come out in dinner. And if it does, we don't want to talk about it too much because that means it's messy. But you've now created so much more of you by putting these pieces back in a better place that allows you to look at things and say, now what do I put in here? What can I add to this piece of pottery that I've created for myself, this new part of me that I can put in there that's a lot firmer? And it's not dependent on someone else. This is something I've created. And in this time, I can hold firm to this because I know it's good. And I know I've put a lot of work into this. And I can still be part of someone else, but I can still keep hold of what I have here. And one of the words you might hear of, and this comes up a lot in sessions or in people I talk with who've been through divorce, they'll say, well, people tell me I have a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to be a single parent, or it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing in this divorce, or, to relocate to a different place because you had to maybe sell the house and now go live in a smaller place. That took a lot of courage to do that. Yeah, right? It's courage you had to force to do because it wasn't like you woke up and said, oh, gee, I want to go live someplace different, or I want to refinance my finances because I have to get a different job to make ends meet. Courage comes from the Latin, which is, and again, I apologize for not getting this correct, is courage. And what that translates to is an act of the heart. So when we think of courage, we think that I'm brave and I'm strong and I'm going to go out there and fight the enemy that's in front of me. But the original meaning doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're strong and you go out there and you conquer and you defend the enemy. Courage means an act of the heart. That means I have really gotten put in a place that speaks to the very core of who I am. And my heart has been broken. My emotions have been crushed. But from that place, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to mend that part of my heart that hurts so much and make sure it's strong enough to move forward. Physically, socially, emotionally, mentally, all of those pieces that come in to make this work. So when you think of courage, or you have people tell you, well, that's really courageous what you're doing, you're really brave, just say thanks and go back and remember that courage is an act of the heart. And when your heart is in a good place, you'll be in a good place and you'll continue to move forward. Because now, to keep going back to that analogy, 5 feet above the surface, I'm right there. And now I could start taking off all this weight that's been keeping me down, and I could start moving towards the shore. And that's what falling up means. I'm now moving towards solid ground. I can get on the shore and start walking ahead. In the next couple of conversations, we're going to talk, what does that look like? What does it look like walking ahead? Do I get connected with somebody else again? And how do I manage my children now that I'm in a good place and trying to put things back together again?